the past chairman of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, hands-on experience on governance of institutions, and it gives me pleasure to have this opportunity today to share with you, considering the very important role that clergy plays in the society. So it is an honor and a privilege for me. And so this topic is a very personal topic, because ethics is really a very personal issue, because it is not an issue of law, it is not an issue of what if you don't do it, then you will be taken to jail, because it's about morality, and we are going to look at it as we go forward in our presentation. So I will just skip that, because that is the introduction that was given. But for purposes of today's session, we are going to look at what is ethical leadership. We are going to look at the biblical foundations of ethical leadership. So here I have to give a disclaimer. I am not the professional as you are in this area of the biblical foundation, because I know this is your cup of tea as clergy, and I will not pretend that I am more vast than yourselves on biblical foundations. But when it comes to leadership and ethics, on that I can claim some expertise. Building and maintaining trust. How do we build and maintain trust? How do we ensure there's transparency and disclosure as we shepherd the congregation, as we lead the church? How do we handle ethical challenges that come about as we do our work at the pulpit, in the administration of the church, in the family, because ethics is both officially and personally, not only in the office but also as personal capacity. So mistakes can happen. We have ethical guidelines, but we can cross the line because of not because of our own intentions or doing, but it can happen because we are human. And even if it happens, how do we learn from that mistake? How do we foster a culture of continuously growing ethically? Because it's a journey, it's not a destination. It is a journey, continuous growing. The destination, it's not a destination. And lastly, how do we manage conflict of interest? Very important. And so we start with introduction to ethical leadership. And I thought maybe we can just start by what is ethics? And I thought just to go back and see what is the genesis, what is the root of the word ethics. I found that this is a Greek word, ethos, and that means character. Yeah? So this really is tied very closely. Ethics is about one's character. And it also gives us the moral compass. That's why I was saying it is beyond the law to what is right. Because there are some things that the law will not tell you, do not do this, or do not, but do this. So it is about your moral compass, the things that our world view, how we were brought up, what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. And that is what we will go with as a definition for ethics. And then also leadership. So what is leadership? Leadership is basically influencing people to be able to move together into a determined direction, which is more like the vision. So we are shaping the future using a vision, which we envision and tell the people we are leading, be it with the church leadership, be it with the congregation in church. This is our vision. We shape that vision and lead them towards that direction through a mission. I believe most churches will have a mission which tells them the how. How are we going to get to that place? And the values. What do we need to take us there? So we are going to Yambu. That is our mission. How are we going to go there? Do we use a motorbike or a matatu? That is the mission. We use a matatu to take us to Yambu. What do we need? If we are using, for example, a motorbike, we need a helmet, we need insurance, we need the reflective jacket. Those are the core values, the things that will make sure we get to our destination. And therefore, ethics is very important to enable us lead in a manner that will give us sustainable leadership and to achieve the vision which we are aspiring to realize. So ethical leadership is the moral dimension now based on our core values, and one of the values is ethics. And being a leader, to lead ethically, one must have courage. It is not easy to lead ethically. It is not easy to lead ethically, so courage is very important, and this courage to lead in a more morally upright manner should be espoused in all areas of our lives. That's why I talked about personal, professional, and all other aspects. How we relate with people. It is not something you wear when we are in church or in the office, and then when we go home, it is a different picture altogether. So ethical leadership, courage go together. And lastly, integrity is also very important because it's a part of ethics, and this is where now we are adhering to the moral and ethical principles in everything that we do. So these principles include things like justice, respect, fairness. Just that now, lately, in our country, we've come up with values where we are saying in everything we do, we must be fair. Initially, I think my colleague here, the registrar, will understand, for example, fair administrative action was not there before the Constitution 2010. You could just wake up, make a decision, and it is binding on everybody. But you see, the Constitution has now said you must do public participation, you must give someone a fair hearing, and the court can actually set aside a decision that you take if you did not involve people, and there was no fairness in the process that the decision was reached. So we can see even the law now is evolving to catch up with the ethical and moral principles, because before that was not allowed. It was something good we aspire to do as we lead, the people we lead. So I thought just to highlight that, what I have underlined. So when we are leaders, we make decisions based on what is right to do for the common good of everyone, without any bias, without favor, without fear, without any prejudice, or without any preference. Because the bigger picture is, it is for the common good of everybody. So if it is in the church, it is for the common good of the church, the congregation, and the whole body, of the church. Not just based on what is good for ourselves. Or if it is a business, for example, not only for profit. Yeah? If it is in the church, for example, not only to bring in more congregants, but it is what is the common good for all humanity. And normally when we are talking about ethics, we have very important questions that we always have to ask ourselves, and especially we look at this when we are talking about the moral, the ethical dilemma, or the conflict of interest. Because the important question, number one to ask is, am I doing the right thing? What is the right thing? When you have an issue before us, a decision to take, am I doing the right thing? And I believe as human beings, we have a conscience which will tell us this is wrong and this is right. So am I doing the right thing? Number two, am I doing it in the right way? Because you can do the right thing, but in a way that will cause injustice and will deprive someone of their rights. So are you doing it in the right way? And lastly, am I doing it for the right reason? What is the driving, what is the incentive, what is the motivation behind that decision? Is it the right reason? Is it because personally I am going to benefit? Is it because my brother will benefit? Is it because as an individual I'll make more money? So those are the key questions we have to ask as we practice ethical leadership. maybe for guidance, do we do plenary after or it can be interactive?
You have choice.
Okay. So please feel free if you want to ask as we move along. I am open to that. Now, these are the biblical foundations. I actually got these from the, what shall I do? Let's check for something very good. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I picked this from the code of governance for churches, which was done by the Sawe Trust. And they actually picked this as the biblical principles of ethics. Because we're talking of ethical leadership, where do we get the guidance? 10 Commandments, we all know about it. And from Sunday school, from the time we started going to Sunday school, we were told, thou shalt not, do all the stuff up to number 10. Those are the guiding principles. We come to the standards, the beatitudes that Christ gave. Matthew 5, we understand. Those are some of the standards that should guide us as we aspire to be ethical leaders. And the other one is the qualification of church leaders. We understand that from 1 Timothy 3:1 to 12. This is why I was saying I will not go into the scriptures because this is your expertise. I will just quote and highlight so that even as we go back and reflect, this is in the code of governance for churches by the Sawe, and it actually goes ahead to explain this in further details. We move on. We also have a very good website known as Ministry Brands, which has also highlighted some of the very important aspects. Integrity. I think in our country, integrity is a very key word because everyone talks about integrity. Your MPs have integrity, your leaders have integrity, MCAs, governors. But this is what is provided in the Bible. That ministers must uphold honesty, sincerity, and moral uprightness in all their lives. Following the example of Christ and speaking and acting with integrity. Those are some of the verses that are quoted. So integrity is very key. Because without integrity, we bring disrepute to what we are preaching. So we talk the talk and walk the walk. So that then it is clear that what we are saying is what we are doing. And integrity actually, integral means one. What you're saying, what you're doing, what you're thinking, they're all meshed into one. As the, what does the Bible say? As the man speaketh, so he. So from our thoughts to our actions, all those should actually be integrated. It is one. What we are saying is what we are doing, is what we are thinking, is what we are intending, even for the people we are leading. Number 2, servant leadership. A servant leader is a leader who has put themselves to serve the people they are leading. Not to lord over them, not to boast over them, not to give commands on what should be done, but to serve them, to serve the people they are leading. And that is what ethical leadership is in the Bible. The verses, you can mark them, be able to read them, because we are saying you should be there to serve the congregation, to serve the leadership of the church, whatever role we have, not for them to serve us. Demonstrating humility, compassion, selflessness. Because sometimes in the African context, a leader is thought to be this very, big person who cannot be questioned, who, when they ask for something, it is yes, sir, yes, madam, and it is done. But this servant leadership is where we listen more, empathize more, serve, we are there to serve, but not to serve ourselves. Love and compassion, as Christians, love and compassion, to show empathy to the lowly people in the community. And just as Christ commanded in the Bible, those are the verses, an ethical leader is a compassionate leader. An ethical leader is a leader who will love, regardless of the issues, the differences, and the challenges that are prevailing in that particular circumstance. So, an ethical leader must show compassion and love. Accountability. Uwajibikaji. Yeah? So I think integrity and accountability are standard core values, especially in the public service, where accountability means accounting or answering for your actions. As a leader, are we answerable? Are we answerable for our actions? Are we answerable for our decisions? Is there anyone who can come and say, Leah, this is what you have done. We do not agree with your decision. Can you tell us why you reached that decision? Can you account, or you will say, Utadu? I am the one in charge here, and I'm the one entitled to make that decision. Are we accountable? Can we account? Yeah? So that comes with humility also, as we can see there. And the choices we make, the actions we take, to be accountable. As a leader, before we lead. It continues further, we have 3 more. Truthfulness. Sometimes I feel that in our country, this is a very rare value, especially now that we have social media and all these things. People just say things to excite. But we are told to communicate truth. Truth in love, truth to power. Because if someone is saying the truth, even though the person you're communicating to is a person in power, truth to power, yeah? Avoiding deceptive ways of, unfortunately, we have seen people have complained about prosperity gospel. I don't know whether that also can be deceptive, but people complain. We saw what happened in Shakahola. Was there truthfulness in what those people were told? Was there truthfulness in how those people were led? So that is not ethical leadership, because those people lost their lives because someone was not true, compassionate, to make sure that they did the right thing. And then ethical conduct, to live according to all the moral teachings, including fairness, I've talked about that, justice, regarding dignity for other people, so that even as we live and interact with all people, it doesn't matter what class they are. All people are welcome, all people are treated fairly, and we can see the verses. Micah is there, and Galatians, just to guide us on the issue of how to handle the people we interact with. Lastly, stewardship. Stewardship is the gifts that we are given, the talents that we are given, the privilege, the opportunity, the position. Yeah? It is how do we discharge them? How do we discharge those responsibilities? So we have to be faithful stewards for what has been allocated to us. The resources, the duties, in a manner that will be pleasing. We remember the story of the faithful servant who was given a talent, another one buried and returned as it was, but the one who multiplied was told, you faithful and good and faithful servant. Yes, so that is actually stewardship. Stewardship of the resources, the gifts, the talents given. So if our talents in church or wherever we are leading, we know our talents, we know our gifts. We steward them in a manner that will be pleasing, and that means we are ethical leaders. Trust is a very important aspect in leadership, and it is important to establish and maintain trust. Can anyone tell us why? Why is trust important? As a leader, why is it important for you to be trusted? Any try, any take that? I mean, I'm the leader. Why do I need to be trusted? Yes, like.
Because leadership sets influence and the direction will influence people and really matters their lives. So if you are not trusted, you can lead them to a wrong
direction. Thank you, that is true. And so, I think I'll just be going back to the Shakahola because that is one of the most recent, most worried and most sad happenings in our society. So now, the people, maybe in that community or the relatives of the people who lost their lives, do you think they would really trust if they are now taken, to another church and they are told this is what we need to do? Do you think they would really trust that these people are there? It's really hard. Yeah, and that is why, as a church, because really the church is a very critical foundation of the society. Trust is very important. So it is important that we are always deliberate in making sure we are building, not only to build and maintain it at the lowest level and continue taking it to a higher level. Because trust once lost, it is very hard to bring back. So how do we build trust? Consistency. Our values, our character must be consistent so that people will know this is Robert, this is what we expect from him. We have this situation, this is the decision he will take, and we are sure there is consistency. Hakuna preaching water, drinking wine, It is consistent. So it is important to be consistent. That is why the values that we live, people must always know and anticipate and predict this is who Robert is and this is what we expect. So that builds trust because people know this is the Robert we don't expect anything else from him. Predictability, same. It is very predictable how a decision will be taken. For example, if there is an issue that is we are dealing with, maybe at the leadership of the church, affecting maybe one of the pastors. When we deal with the same issue differently for different people, you know that erodes trust. Because why? When it was Patrick, this is how we handle the issue. Now it is a canon karaoke, we are handling it a different way. Why? So there is no trust because there is no predictability. And therefore it is important to make sure we are predictable. Transparency. Transparent in what we do. There is nothing to hide, it's an open. If it is, for example, finances in the church, I've seen people publishing their accounts. I've seen people saying, we had this funds drive, this is what we have made, and this is how we are going to use the money. Transparency, and it creates trust. Accountability. Accountability also, for example, if we do an audit in churches, not all churches do audits, but if a church does an audit and the auditor comes in the meeting of, I don't know, that whatever government structure that is, and they say these are the accounts, we have audited, we have found this is in order, what do you think the level of trust will be in such an organization? It goes very high, yeah? Because someone is coming to check and then you are accounting for what you are given to handle. Personal integrity, if we have people with integrity, trust is high because people are like, no, Diana, hawezi tuangusha. She's a person of integrity. So we trust that even if she's in that boardroom making that decision, the decision which will be made for our own good. And also credibility, they go together. Are you credible? The decisions that you make, they are credible, and someone will always say, yeah, this was really genuine, There were no hidden cards. There is no hidden agenda behind that decision. So these are some of the ways we can achieve building of trust and making sure we keep up the trust. So do we have governance structures in place? I believe Madam Registrar talked about all those governance structures. Governance structures are important because they move power, decision making from one person into a structured system where people will sit, bring different expertise and make decisions that are not skewed or that are not favoring only one side. So it is important. That's why we need to have a board or an oversight organ, whatever it is, which will always sit together, make decisions, and not one person or two people making a decision. So once that happens, people will say, oh, you know, the Council of Elders or the Deacon Board, you know, or the Council of the Church, and it brings more trust because then it is a governance organ. Financial transparency, I've already talked about. People publishing their finances, people, you know, calling an auditor, for example, to audit their accounts. And that keeps people at ease because people don't keep wondering, hey, what's going on, what are they doing here? It is clear, it is open for everyone to see. Effective communication. Effective communication. If we communicate effectively, then there is nothing left to guess. No words are left unsaid. So people will always understand that what has been said is what is the position, and therefore we trust our leadership. Stakeholder participation. Do we engage the community? We are around the congregation, you know, the committees of church as we make decisions. Because once people are consulted, they are involved, they participate, they feel like they own the project, the decisions, and therefore it enhances the level of trust. Because it's not just a project by one person, but there has been consultation. And then also having a code of conduct also helps to maintain trust. How many of us have seen the code of governance by Sabika? Okay, let's see. Anthony has seen it. Okay, that is good. Edward. Oh, we are quite a number, which is good. And that code actually gives the minimum guidelines on what needs to be done, including conflict of interest and many other things that will help the church, wherever you serve, to have a more organized way and a more predictable way of doing the things that you do. So where there is a code, it is clear what is expected, it is clear who is abiding, it is clear who is not abiding, and therefore there is more trust because there's already guidance on what needs to be done. Okay, I think we are okay. It's just
yeah, okay.
I need to see the exit. I just pass it. Okay.
May need to trust Reverend.
Okay, it was just a saying. So, but the Bible also assures us, if any of us lacks wisdom, we ask God, He will give us generously without finding any fault. So, if we are having an issue, battling, dealing with trust issues, let me fall back, and God will be able to guide us, give us wisdom on where to help. But with all those things, we should be able to build trust wherever we are serving. If we are serving in the boards, if we are in the pulpit, wherever we are, building and maintaining trust by being consistent, transparent, and we'll be able to manage. Transparency and disclosure. I think this is an issue. I think the African context this is not something we are used to. Even in government, this is not something the government was used to. And there has been a struggle to bring up issues of transparency and disclosure. The Constitution talks about transparency. Article 10, national values, transparency is very important. Article 35, access to information. People have a right to access information that will help them to enforce their rights. So as a community, and I think now that cascades also to the church needs to be transparent and provide disclosure for information that is useful, necessary, and needed by the members of the church. So this is very crucial because it creates trust, it creates confidence, and it maintains integrity. So I've seen churches now have websites, they will talk about who their leaders are. You are able to see, their profile, who are these people. You're able to see the projects they are engaging in. And therefore, there's a lot of transparency and disclosure. Some will publish, as I've already talked, information about how the decisions are taken. Some have annual meetings. I don't know how many of us have AGMs for their members. Where I come from, we have annual delegates conference, where members go, sit, the accounts are presented, the leadership is announced, and that creates a lot of trust, it creates a lot of, belief and respect for the leadership. So those are some of the things that we should keep as a way of governing and adopting transparency and disclosure. So we've already talked about financial reporting, and we can start small. It doesn't have to be a big bang, like if we have a drive, where I come from, let me give the example where I come from. We have a project to build a new church. And I can see there's always, a call for pledge, contribute, give to that particular project. So one of the ways of being transparent and disclosing is how much have we collected, and this is what we are going to do with it. Independent audits, we have talked about it. The governance structures, I've already mentioned the AGM, where every year the members will sit and discuss. Proper meeting, have updates. How are the leaders of the church appointed? Are we just bringing, the people who are known to us to be on our boards? Yeah. How do we settle on who sits on there? On the governing organs, how do we select who is the senior pastor? How do we select who is in charge of which ministry? I think those are some of the things. They are very simple, but when people understand the transparency and disclosure, it is a sign of ethical leadership. The issue of budgeting, I had also mentioned participation. Can people give comments? Can people give their thoughts on what should be the priority? Are there minutes when meetings are happening? For example, the deacon board is meeting and decisions are taken. If someone was to ask today, how was this decision arrived? Can we see the minutes? Are the minutes there? Yeah, that's where we are moving to. Access to information. If a member or an interested party or a stakeholder wants to, for one reason or another, understand how that decision was reached, can they access the information? Or it is under lock and key, not to be accessed by anyone? Is the congregation updated on what is happening? What decisions are being taken? What are the plans? Where are we going from here? What are the changes? Yeah, that goes a long way to enhance transparency and disclosure. Is there room for feedback? Or hiyo tumesema na hivyo na tumemaliza. You know, are people allowed to say if we could do this, or next time if we can do that, if we had done this, this would have been better? Feedback mechanism for people to give feedback. So we should be the light of the world so that we are giving light that people can see. And I agree that yes, what we are doing is the right thing as ethical leaders. And First Corinthians, let all things be done decently and in order, so that then it is very clear how those things work. Anything that is decent and orderly, haiwezi fichwa, ile maneno mbaya ndio inafichwa. So when you are transparent and you are disclosing, it means there is decency and order. Now, what is an ethical challenge? John, can you share with us? I know John from somewhere else, that's why I picked on him. What is an ethical challenge?
Could mean that a situation where there's conflict regarding a situation whether it's ethical or not, depending on the viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. And remember we said ethics is not law, so it's not like I am speeding or I am within the limit. Okay?
So it depends on somebody's interpretation.
Okay.
Of the matter that is placed.
Okay. Right. Good, good. That's a good feedback. Maybe a lady this time. Madam. Jane. What do you think is the ethical challenge?
Not very sure. I still need help.
Okay.
But I'm imagining that it's when what we are talking about, the ethics, that transparency and building trust, when it's not there, and that means there is a challenge.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think we are all on the same side, just to align so that we go in the right direction. So, an ethical challenge happens. There is a conflict between two or more moral values, or principles or obligations, where you may opt for one, but compromise the ethical standard, which will lead to violation. We're going to look at a case study at some point, so that we see whether we are internalizing. So an ethical challenge, for example, would be, maybe I can talk about this as a lawyer. A client comes and confesses that they murdered Peter. Yeah? So as a lawyer, I have a duty to protect client confidentiality. Yeah? It is duty to protect client confidentiality. But maybe ethically, as a person, I do not want to participate, to be assisted, to be part of the person who's assisting this person to get away. He's a murderer, there is a law. The law is supposed to take its effect so that then this person can be put behind the bars, because that is what the law says. When a person murders, they belong to jail. So for me, as a lawyer, the ethical challenge or the ethical dilemma will be, do I report this man to the police, or do I close my eyes, look the other side and tell him, no, I will not represent you? If I report him, I have a duty to maintain confidentiality between me and the client. So that is the ethical dilemma. What do I do? What is the right thing to do? And so, there are various frameworks that help us when we are faced with such an ethical dilemma. How to handle it so that we can reach the best decision. So number one is what option will give the maximum benefit to the greatest number of people. Yeah? That is called in legal term utilitarianism. Which decision of the two? Because these are both moral issues. So if you choose one, one will suffer. So number one is to ask ourselves, now if I take this decision A, will it give the maximum benefit to the greatest number of people? In the example I've given, which option will give a utilitarian outcome? To report this person to the police so that he's arrested, or to keep client confidentiality? To report it to the police, because then that means you have saved many other people in the family who would have been this person's victim in another 2 months or 3 months. So that is one of the ways you weigh what is the best decision. Option number two, what is the universally acceptable action? We are all human and we know there are basic standards of human conduct, human logic. So what is the universally accepted standard? So if we find today a sick person sleeping on the street, what is the logical thing to do? This person, there are no other people, it's raining, they are sick and they are there. Okay, maybe for Kenya, we have become a bit blunt in Nairobi, but I don't know, what is the universally acceptable thing to do as a human being? To be a good Samaritan, take this person, help them, that is universally acceptable. So when you have a dilemma, an ethical, moral dilemma, then the second choice is to ask yourself, what would I be expected to do as a human being? What is universally the acceptable action? And that way, by looking at that, you are able to make a determination on what out of the two choices that you have. And then the third one is which action will express a virtuous character. We know about virtues, the virtues of respect, justice, fairness, and all those things. So if there are two actions you are opting, which one do I take? Which one, by taking that action, you'll be able to exhibit, to demonstrate to the world that it is a virtuous thing to have done. For example, this example that I gave about, I think the one for the lawyer will not apply. We can look at an example of, we have an employee, for example, who has been mistreated for one reason or another. Maybe you're in church leadership and it's an employee who has been mistreated by, a pastor, but the pastor is very powerful, very influential, really liked in the church. So there's an option of either reporting the pastor to the authorities or appeasing the person who has been mistreated to, what I share, because now this person is really very influential and we do not want to bring trouble. But out of the two, which one will express virtue? Which of the two actions will express virtue? Is to report the person, the powerful person who has mistreated the other, or appease the one who has been mistreated to keep quiet? Report. Yes. You report because then it it means that you are being fair to the person who has been mistreated. If you go for the other option, it means you have treated the mistreated person unfairly, and you have actually perpetrated a vice, which then will not lead to a virtuous outcome. Yeah? So those are some of the things that we can use for purposes of handling, yeah, facing an ethical challenge.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If a close friend came to me and confessed that they cheated on their spouse, not even a friend, maybe a deacon, and I need to make a decision, and you know, all these decisions have risks. It could even mess up their marriage. And the man looks like, no, it could even be the lady anyway. Looks like that they are broken, they need help. In this situation, what would be the right decision to make?
Now, even here, we have to apply this one. So, number one, I think the moral dilemma is, this person has come to you in trust. So you owe them confidentiality, because they didn't go announcing to everyone. They came to you because they trust you. So confidentiality is one of the things you must accord them. That is their right. The second one is, if he's a church elder, for example, we know what the Bible says about what is expected, and you are aware of that information, you are duty bound to either take that information within the structures of the church for the right action to be taken. Because I know maybe someone needs to, like maybe take time off, repent, and all that. I think there's normally a process. I'm not very sure how it happens. So you have these two duties to keep the information confidential, but also you have a duty now to the church, the body of Christ too, so that this person can go through the right process of confession and all that forgiveness, self-reflection, so that they can be restored. So what do you do? What is the right thing to do? So which decision will give the maximum benefit to the greatest number of people?
I'm asking that because supposing, it's a risk. Supposing you want to really go through that and forgiveness and all that, because how many could be doing the same and they're not opening up? And number two, should we lose the brother just because you wanted to fulfill what is being put in the Constitution?
It's a very good ethical dilemma. That's why now I wanted us to look at these options, the three options. What is universally acceptable? Because you are a man of God, you are a leader in church. What is the universally acceptable thing to do? Yes.
If I were asked, in the first place, this person came to confess to you. He had the option of not telling you. So they told you probably because they want to repent. Then apart from that, the Bible also gives the ways of dealing with such issues. Because even where the guy has not told you, but you have discovered that he's cheating on your wife, I think the Bible says you approach the guy with some witnesses. You tell him to change his ways. Probably you tell him, I don't know how many times, but I think the Bible doesn't. The Bible doesn't contemplate, just tell him now. But it also says if you tell him and he doesn't change, then you can announce it to the whole congregation. And I believe when you inform the wife, because there is that option of informing the other person who is being affected. The issue of informing the wife to some extent also is that part of announcing to the whole congregation. So I would think maybe you consider the reason why this person informed you. This person informed you in confidence. In the first place, it is not like he's a criminal. Criminal is being arrested. He's maybe going to get jail, so he has to tell you every minute. that as we represent him as a lawyer, we are representing him from a point of view.
Yes.
But in this case, this is a guy who has come to confess to you, not because he's going to be taken to jail, not because the wife already knows. He's giving you information with the purpose that you help you to change it.
Okay, that's very good. So, I don't know, maybe we can have another discussion on what is universally acceptable, what will express virtue, who is the greatest beneficiary, the biggest number of people. That is why it is called an ethical dilemma. What do? You have to balance. And you remember when we were starting, we said, if you select one alternative, it compromises. So if you select to tell on him, you have compromised on his standing, reputation. Yes, I would like us to have a discussion because I do not have an answer. This is a moral dilemma is where
I think it's very contextualized.
Yes.
It depends with the context.
Mm-hmm.
And also the system of beliefs in that community or society. Because, for example, as we are a church, we will apply biblical principles as much as they're not so universally accepted. But we believe in obedience to the word of God. This guy needs to be disciplined. And he needs to be neat. If at all he's leaning on his wife, he needs to be exposed and he needs to need. We need to deal with sin. Paul said, what is it called? Yeast. If you just leave it, because in Corinthians it's fully dealt with, if you just leave it over there, it will affect the whole law. So, I think now for us, I would say, because we are men of the cloth and women of the cloth, our universally accepted, as not universally, but our acceptable standard in this context is the word of God. And that is what we will apply. It might be very difficult, but we have to turn aside the emotional, even the emotional attachment you have to the issue. Could be your closest friend, this brother or something. But you have to, I had to deal with such a situation in my church a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Patrick, any other view? Yes.
That thing is very much contentious, because when you are dealing with maybe the clergy and the congregation, like the example you gave us about a powerful man in the church. Sometimes back, I had to deal with a church secretary who had an affair with a student, and it was like the church was saying he cannot do it. And even if he has done, usipeleke polisi, mbona unaipeleka? Alafu inarudisha wewe pastor wewe sasa. And the whole church is like against you. Wewe unajua umefanya kitu kile kizuri for the benefit of the church. Sababu huyu mtu ameweka mimba student under 18. Na sasa kanisa na the community, maana ni mtu wao, ukienda kwa funeral organization is the chairman, ukienda kwa chama nyingine is the chairman, is the secretary, is all over the community. Alafu amefanya kitendo kama hiki, and then the whole community is like hii kitu hicho. Now that decision, hata kama utaenda ushtaki, unakuja hata mama ya mtoto anakuambia bro, nikiwa utaenda transfer, sisi tutaachwa wapi? Wewe ukati mnatana nini? And then unaona mtoto amedhulumiwa.
Yes.
You know the children rights.
It's unfair.
It's unfair to the child. Kubaliana na huyu mtu. And according to the Bible, it's wrong wewe mchungaji kuwa part of the community. But the whole congregation, you know, hiyo kitu universally acceptable. They are agreeing with it. Haina makosa. Atatake responsibility ya mtu kama alitoa hii mimi. Unaona? No.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult.
Na wewe uko hapo na unapata kwa body yako. It's like you're standing alone. Sasa unaenda unaambia chief, if you are not going to do it, I will do it. Maana mimi sio hii community, I will do it.
So you can see.
Sasa
It is
hao
real.
community inasema haisifanyi. Ukienda kwa chifu napatana na wazee wako wakitoka kwa chifu. Sasa how can you handle that? Maana I faced it.
Because we are talking of ethical leadership. So this is what is expected of an ethical leader. When you're faced with an ethical dilemma, you must take a decision. And these are some of the, now I think we have gotten from Patrick that our bare minimum is the Bible. What does the Bible say? You can look at some of these other things as you reach a decision, but trust you me, whatever decision you make, not everyone will be happy. You know, one day it will be. So the issue is now to balance.
Unategemea sadaka.
We are going to look at more examples in the code, but let me just move on. I've been told that I talked about criminal confessions, rationalization of sin. Actually, what we are talking about is rationalizing. Yeah, we are rationalizing and saying, you know, now this what will happen? People might leave.
Yeah.
You know, the congregants might move to another church. Then we say, mambo ibaki vizuri. So you are rationalizing sin, which is truly not in order. Confidentiality, we've talked about confidentiality and issues of misconduct. So what is the process? Number one is to recognize. It is important to recognize when we are facing an ethical dilemma. First appreciate, hey, this is an ethical dilemma and I need to deal with it. What options do I have? Option one, option two. And then you weigh them as per the rules we have discussed. Once you take the decision, you take action on that decision. And then thereafter, maybe you can have a reflection. This is the decision I took. What is the outcome? So that in future we have lessons on how better to handle such issues. So it is an issue of continuous learning because there is no wrong or right. And remember when you were starting, I said it is not an issue of the law has prohibited you that if you do this, you'll be guilty of an offense, you'll go to prison. We are going to look at, as I conclude, we'll look at the case study in the Sabika Code. Role modeling and ethical behavior. As leaders, we don't work in isolation. We work and there are many people looking up to us, give them direction, to set the right tone. So whatever behavior we espouse, we demonstrate, we show to the people around us, is the tone we have set. And just like children, mama akiongea na soprano iko juu, mtoto utapata pia, anaongelesha msichana wa kazi yake kama vile mama anamuongelesha. So that is leadership, setting the tone at the top. So utapata mtoto anashout. Now that tells you that's how the mom talks to them. So if we demonstrate an ethical behavior, we set a tone where an ethical behavior is the order of the day, it is accepted, this is how we do everything here. Definitely, everybody in the leadership, in the congregation, that will be the order of the day. And it is very important that we espouse ethical behavior. This is a burden because it means we must always measure our steps, our words, our thoughts, so that we are, our ethical compass should always be north, north, north. No room for unethical behavior. So it is a burden because it means you are bearing a big burden to make sure you are acting ethically. But it is also an opportunity because if we are able to successfully lead ethical lives and show ethical behavior, it means we are influencing because we are the ones who set the tone. The people around us and the society in general will become more ethical. So ethical excellence or shortcoming will be magnified throughout the organization. So as leaders, if we have ethical shortcomings or we espouse an ethical behavior, our culture is unethical, the whole organization will espouse. Because you cannot, plant maize and expect to harvest beans. That which you have planted is what will maua itaonyesha. If it is ethical excellence, it will be excellence where you are. If it is unethical, everywhere will be unethical around it. So What are the practical ways of making sure we continue upholding ethical behavior? Can we do training, continuous training like this? So congratulations even for coming for this training, because this is a way of building capacity and making sure that we are always understanding what is happening, how to be better leaders. Having accountability mechanisms. In church, I don't know how, but I know people have accountability partners so that once in a while you reflect on where you have sidestepped, what did you do wrong, where did you backslide, and they can always hold you to account, keep you on check so that you are always living ethically, and also accepting feedback. I know people, ethical leaders actually accept feedback because this is how we continuously improve ourselves, where we have someone who will keep us accountable and give us feedback so that we are not this demigod, small person who will always, whatever they say is right, whatever they think is right, and no one can tell them anything. Ethical leaders accept feedback. We can also have mentorship programs within our churches, within leaders, within different ministries in church, just to mentor every person who is serving, working on ethics, so that then it is a continuous discussion, having someone mentoring whoever is serving in a different capacity on ethics, and also have guidance, a code of ethics or guidelines, so that people know that if I face this challenge, this is how I should handle it. If I come across this is how I should report. So that makes it very easy to role model ethical behavior. Philippians, this is a very common verse. So whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is just noble and a good report, that is what we should always expose, that is what we should always carry forward, that is what we should always model in all that we do as leaders. How do we learn from mistakes? So we have made mistakes and we have repented and we want to move on from that. Number one, we must acknowledge that mistake and provide restitution where, if there is a place for restitution. If we had treated someone unjustly, if we had taken something inappropriately, that should be returned. And the person who had been wronged should be returned to where they were before they were wronged. So I've talked about breach of confidentiality, conflict of interest, and interpersonal disputes. So this can happen where, for example, we are not relating well with someone I am working with. If it's in the church, maybe a fellow board member, a fellow pastor, maybe someone in the congregation. So once that happens, we should be able to apologize, acknowledge, and move on. And where we're supposed to make any restitution, we should do that. We need to be remorseful. We need to have humility, and we need to be transparent. It's just that when you go and apologize, these are things you must be transparent to say, this is what happened, I'm sorry, and this is what I will do to correct. But also, we must do a root cause analysis. That is to say, why did we do what we did? How come I made this mistake? So root cause analysis, I say, ask 5 whys, the science of analyzing root causes of why things have happened. The first why? Why? By the time you get to the 5th why, that is the root. The root cause of why whatever happened. And then we look at what are the factors that led us to do what we did. What are the actions we need to take to correct and prevent it in the future? We can give an example of maybe misappropriating or embezzling funds, just as an example. So why did I take the money belonging to the office? It wasn't my money. Why? I can say that I needed to buy a new dress. Why? Because there's peer pressure. Why? Because I don't have good friends. Why? And by the time you get to the root you deal with the root, then you kill the ego, it will not happen again. So what are the factors and the context so that you're able to contextualize the issue? So what do I do so that it doesn't happen in the future? When I'm given money in the office, I will account for it immediately, I will not keep it. And then preventive action so that it doesn't happen again. You make sure there is a policy about what happens when someone is given custody of money in the organization. So this entails putting in place policies to make sure that mistake does not happen again. Because if we don't do any actions to correct or prevent, it means this is something that will recur. If we don't do a root cause analysis, we'll just deal with the symptoms, but the root cause will remain. And the chances of the mistake recurring will still remain because the root cause has not been addressed. And then we also, when mistakes happen, they have happened, but let us use them as opportunities to continue learning and growing, not just to rebuke and castigate without using it. So what have we learned from this? If it was an issue, for example, of misappropriation of funds, what have we learned as an organization? And from that, what are we going to do about it? So use it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Grow your processes, grow your policies, your procedures, and grow the people by training them, giving mentorship, support systems, so that the issue they are facing, they are able to deal with it. That one I've already. You update the policies, the procedures that you have. Maybe it's an issue of conflict of interest. Our conflict of interest policy maybe did not address that issue, so we amend it to include that policy so that in the future it doesn't happen again. And so even as we learn from our mistake, it is still good that we continue fostering growth, ethical growth in the organization. So we must be good role models for ethical behavior. In our personal capacity, at home, with our spouses, our children, and also officially where we work. If it is in the church, always be the role model. Because when you're the role model, you're fostering a culture of ethical growth. Number 2, entrenching transparency and accountability. We talked in detail about accountability and transparency when we started, and I believe that one has sunk. And also provide guidelines. Some things we take for granted, but people know this is ethically right, this is unethical, this is ethical, but it is not common sense. So it's good to have guidelines, provide guidelines which people can always refer to, take people for training so that then they always understand and the organization will continue growing ethically. Provide open communication channels so that people, when they make a mistake, there is an opportunity for them to openly confess, openly talk about it, and take account for the issues they have done, so that when people have mistakes, they don't hide and run away. Because if that issue is not addressed, then it will seep and spread. And then you will have an unethical organization. But if the communication channels are open, we are receptive to, people have made a mistake, give them an opportunity to amend the mistake, provide safe spaces for people to feel that they can be accepted despite the mistake, and they will be supported, maybe by being given a mentor, a counselor to support in the mistakes they have made. And then we've already talked about mentorship, ethics committee. Some organizations actually have a committee to deal with ethics specifically, where they are very serious about ethical conduct of the employees in the organization. So that committee can be responsible for training, putting in place these policies, and making sure that ethics permeates the organization as a core value for the organization. We can have independent audits just to check the documents that are there, whether these are helping the organization, or what else do you need to add. Reward very ethical people, sanction people who are unethical, because then when you reward ethical behavior, it increases ethics in the organization. When you sanction, it also reduces ethical behavior. Conflict of interest. It occurs when think my time is running out. Am I out of time?
No, you're good.
We are good?
Mhm.
Okay. So here, what is conflict of interest? I'd already given more Kenya, so maybe someone can. Conflict of interest? Madam Naomi.
I need to understand it fully.
Fully? Okay. Let me try someone else who is not very vigorous. Edward. What is conflict of interest? Edward Smith.
It's basically being involved in maybe actions that can prejudice your ability to make correct decisions because probably you have an interest.
Very well said. Very well said. So, this occurs where one is not able to make an objective and biased decision. So, because there is a clash between my personal interest and my official duties or responsibilities. And therefore, there will always be a lingering question: is my decision really rational, objective, and biased? You know? So, in the church context, I got an example where we say conflict of interest would be a good example where we have an individual who has an interest in the affairs of the church, but they participate in a decision process that may personally benefit him or another individual who has a vested interest in the church. So this one, we are human, and it is not possible to separate that affinity, affection from official business. Because if, for example, the church is outsourcing maybe transport or outsourcing catering, and my husband owns a cafeteria, and now we are saying we want, maybe I'm sitting on the leadership of the church, and now I'm there saying, yeah, let's give them that contract for transport or cafeteria. You see, I'm conflicted because I will benefit one way or another from that decision, or the person I'm associated with will benefit from that decision. So we have guidelines on how to manage conflict of interest in the church context. So these are just examples of awarding contract to related businesses. Maybe the pastor owns a business, but we want that business to, the church to give business to that, to give a contract to that business. Employing relatives, employing friends, employing schoolmates, without following the laid down procedure. Maybe we are making decisions on the benefits, and I want to be there to say, yeah, the person in my position, should earn this much. That is conflict of interest. And mostly because churches in our country may be founded by families or individuals, founder syndrome can affect, because now we are not able to separate me as myself and what the church is supposed to do. I hope when the registrar of company was talking, she was able to tell you the issue of the separating the owner from the church as an entity, so that then as you do what you're doing it at arm's length, not kanisa na mimi ni mtu moja na kila kitu tuko pamoja, So that helps give context. So what are the frameworks that we can use to handle conflict of interest? So we need to have a policy which will prescribe what happens when there is a conflict of interest. Let us also have a register where someone can register any conflict, where in a meeting, for example, we are discussing the issue of employment, and maybe we want to employ a pastor who is my relative and I am sitting in the board. So what happens? Yeah, so we must have a policy which will say what happens in the event there's an agenda we are discussing in the board, and I am conflicted or I have an interest in that agenda. What happens? I must declare, first of all, say we want to employ John. I wish to declare that John is my cousin, and I may be conflicted in making this decision to employ him as our pastor, and I will sign the register to say I'm conflicted with this agenda, and the decision, I will recuse myself from the meeting. I will go away, the others will make a decision, and that decision will be sound, and therefore I will not have participated or influenced that decision because of my conflict. And it is important to also continue training and guiding the leadership of the church on how to handle issues of conflict of interest. Once this is done, it also creates trust, as we talked about in church, because people will know there's a process and people are able to give space for correct decisions to be made without influencing that decision. I'm told my time is up, so what is the process for managing conflict of interest? First of all, we have to be conscious to know, recognize where there is a conflict. Because when you go into a session where decisions are being made, you must consciously recognize that this is an area I'm conflicted. Then declare it, recuse yourself, register, and resolve any issue that may arise out of lack of declaration. Because some people will keep quiet, they will not say, participate, influence the people who are deciding to make that decision. So what happens when that situation occurs? The policy should be able to tell us that. This is a verse which says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. So value others above yourself, not looking at your own interest, yeah, but each of you the interest of the other. So this is a good verse on how we should handle conflict of interest. What are the practical steps that we can take from all this discussion to make sure we live and espouse ethical leadership in our organizations where we are? Number one, let us put in place a code of conduct and ethics. You know, ICS is able to develop, it assists a lot of organizations to develop this. And when you go back, you can reach out and see whether you can be helped to do that. And we also have the SABICA that can also be adopted by the church. Conflict of interest policy, very important. Let us have this in place to guide everyone so that they know that what they're supposed to do where they are conflicted. Then have a policy on how to engage stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Have we mapped our stakeholders in the church? Who are our stakeholders? The community that is around the church. We have the parents who bring children to Sunday school. We have, the congregants. We have maybe the schools we support. How do we engage them in decision making so that we build on the issues of transparency and trust that we talked about later, because we are engaging them. But let us also have a communication policy so that it is very clear how do we communicate any developments, any changes in the church, what information do we give, who gives the information, if someone needs information, how can they access the information, very important. And lastly, also, it is church, yes, but have a policy to encourage people to whistleblow without fearing that they will be victimized. Because you may not know, and you may have people in leadership who are really, behaving unethically, but no one may want, or no one may dare to come forward and say, this is what is happening. So provide a safe environment where people may be able to come and raise any concerns. Because as we said, where there is an ethical conduct, it is the whole organization which will show. So we see everybody is seeing the rotten potato except you, and then now you're wondering what happened. And people see, but they can't report. So this is just something I found on the website where they are saying, we know now Gen Z what is happening. Gen Z will make up 25% of the workforce by 2025. and they will demand leadership ethics more than any generations that have come before them. And it has actually come to pass. So even in church, you have church pastors who are Gen Zs, you know, people in the ministry who are Gen Zs. So even as church leaders, people are demanding ethics more and more. So Gen Z are not going, these are not my words actually, this is a professor at Harvard. Gen Z is not going to negotiate. They have really strong values in ethics. And they don't bend because they are intimidated or because they are getting paycheck. This is Michael McCarthy, is a professor at Harvard. And the idea of letting harmful or hurtful behavior just slide is not acceptable to them. So even in the churches, as we see the Gen Z is calling out on their government, they will also call out on the church. So the earlier we espouse ethical leadership, the better for us as a society. Now this one, you'll just look at them later. There was a book by John Nganga, yeah, and the Sabika Trust. And lastly, we can read together.
Ethics is about how we can become better persons, become more excellent.
Thank you very much. So then I've taken more time. There was something I wanted to share, but it is okay, about some ethical dilemmas, but in the interest of time, I will share with you. Then you can start.
Then I can share with okay. Thank you. Wow. I think these are the kind of people we give maua. 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 Tukeni tu maua. Tuneni hata kama ni kutuna simama tutune. Let's pluck the maua. Pluck from up there. Pluck. Alafu ndio mketendeshe. Pluck them. Get yellow ones. Blue. Green. White. Really kids na kwa ujini. Tuneni zapi. Maua sasa kutetemesha kwa sababu ni bouquet sasa. Tunapeleka alafu tunawekea pole. Thank you. Sasa beat the air. Bonga hiyo hewa. Hiyo hewa inajaribu kusukuma and it is very cold. You are in Nairobi where there is no order, we just go. Wow. How was it?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Fantastic.